tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namassami.วันนี้ได้รับนิมนต์เทศภาษาอังกฤษแต่มองข้างหน้าเห็นได้คนไทยมีความรู้สึกแบบ So I'm very honored to have the opportunity to speak on Dhamma on this occasion, the Tripitaka recitation ceremony. Actually, last year and the year before, I have been invited to give a Dhamma talk at the Tripitaka recitation under the Bodhi tree. And I gave 2 years ago, I gave the talk on the 5th of December. I remember that that was the birthday of Ong Bhumipon, Rama the Ninth King. I was very happy to offer the merit, Tawai bin Raja Kuson, offer the merit to the King, late King of Thailand. And today, December the 5th, once again having the honor, opportunity to offer some Dhamma reflection. Bodh Gaya is a place, in fact it's my favorite place to meditate. So having ordained at Wat Nong Pa Pong, the monastery of Lumpur Cha, in the forest meditation tradition, it is an emphasis of our lifestyle to try to meditate a lot and maintain mindfulness in all postures. When I first went to Bodh Gaya, I was 6 pansa, 18 years ago. I remember when I was meditating under the sacred Bodhi tree, it was a feeling as though you could almost touch or smell or taste or feel Nibbana. Somehow in that place you feel very close to Lord Buddha and his realization. It's very interesting also that when one meditates at the sacred Bodhi tree, even though there is a lot of noises and hard marble floor, mosquitoes, birds, speakers, cold, heat, I notice that mostly there's a feeling of being very happy to be there and to have the opportunity to practice there. So since that time I was able to return. Mention a little about myself. As a junior monk I had a lot of doubts and practice wasn't always easy. I became a monk when I was 23 and I often tell people 6 days out of 7 I wanted to disrobe when I was a samanera at Wat Pananachat. But 1 day out of 7 I felt more peace than I used to feel. More contentment, more happiness, more well-being. And I knew that if I disrobed, if I went back to Sydney, that I would not have that quality of contentment and well-being. So I had enough faith and enough wisdom to understand that that contentment and well-being, peacefulness, was arising because of keeping pure sila, strict precepts, and meditating several times a day. So after a few years, maybe 3 or 4 pansa as a bhikkhu, it was 1 or 2 days a week that I wanted to disrobe, but 4 or 5 days a week where I was feeling more contentment, more well-being, more peace. And so I could see that from practicing according to Lord Buddha's instructions, keeping strict ethical precepts, using meditation practice as a tool for developing mindfulness, and meditating trying to maintain mindfulness and clear comprehension in all postures, that peacefulness did develop, wisdom did develop, patience developed. So I developed more and more faith in Lord Buddha. And when I had the opportunity to go and pay respects in Bodh Gaya, I felt, I don't know if anyone else feels this, but it almost feels as though you have the opportunity to meet and pay respects to Lord Buddha. When you pay respect at Buddha Metta statue and the sacred Bodhi tree. So after my fifth pantha, because as I mentioned I had many doubts, when I first became a bhikkhu I decided to just try for 1 year. After 1 year I determined 1 more year. After a second year I determined 1 more year. After 3 years as a bhikkhu I determined 2 more years. After 5 years I determined 5 more years. So when I made it to 10 years as a bhikkhu, I felt that I wanted to commit to another 10. So it was gently, slow but steadily increasing my commitment. But I wanted to do that in a special place, in a special way. So some students helped me to have the opportunity to go to Bodh Gaya, and I made that adhitthana to stay as a bhikkhu for at least another 10 years. And because the special energy of blessings, or perhaps it's the merit of the Buddha, I wanted to sit under the Bodhi tree as much as possible. And so in those days I started to sit about 6 hours a day under the Bodhi tree. And then I came back to Thailand, another year passed, and I wanted to go back again. I think many of us have that experience of loving Bodh Gaya, and no matter how often we go, there's that sense of wanting to go back. So I did go back again and again. And I worked up from being able to sit 6 hours a day to 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. I noticed all of these Tibetan monks doing their thousands and thousands of full-length prostrations. And I also tried a few. I did 15,000 full-length prostrations myself one time over a 6-week period. But I noticed that when you do the full-length prostrations, your muscles hurt. And then when you come to sit meditation, there's a lot of pain. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm a monk from the meditation practice tradition, so maybe I should meditate as much as possible rather than bow as much as possible. So I slowly increased the capacity to meditate and worked up to meditating for 10 hours a day. When I completed 1,000 hours of meditation under the sacred Bodhi tree, in a moment of rapturous joy and inspiration, I determined, okay, I'm going to sit another 2,000 hours here. 1,000 for the Buddha, 1,000 for the Dhamma, 1,000 for the Sangha. We call this Patipati Puja, the offering of practice. That meant that I had to go back twice a year, usually staying for 6 weeks, in October and November, February and March. I remember when I got to the 2,000 hours point, there was this feeling of, 2,000 really probably would have been enough. Yeah. I don't know about this extra 1,000. But I did complete that 3,000 hours 2 years ago. But in my time sitting in Bodh Gaya, the Venerable who was speaking just before, I've heard him give Dhamma reflections under the Bodhi tree many times. And many of the Thai bhikkhus who lead groups to India, I've listened to many of their Dhamma talks, to their luksits, and developed mudita. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my personal feeling of faith, love, respect, gratitude to Bodh Gaya the place, and give a little bit of personal history. And then after that, I will talk a little about what Lord Buddha realized there, and one of his most important first Dhamma contemplations and utterances. Since we are gathered here in the replica of the Mahabodhi, and in front of an image of Buddha Metta, similar to the one contained in the Mahabodhi in Bodh Gaya, and coming together, chanting, reciting suttas, as has been done in Bodh Gaya many years now. He already had amazing samadhi, and he was aware that if he was resolute, he could have actually become an arahant on the day that he met Dipankara Buddha. But he had the thought, knowing his own strength or his own power, why don't I also cause a multitude to cross over? So he set in his heart the intention to become like a Buddha, as the Buddha. And so, as the legend explains, Sumedha could see that there was a part of the road that Dipankara Buddha was going to have to walk that was quite muddy. And so he took off his rishi's robe, lay it in the mud, and then he also lay in the mud. And he had the thought, may Lord Buddha step on me rather than get his holy feet dirty. And so when Dipankara Buddha came to Yogi Sumedha, he could see his accumulated virtue and the beauty, profundity of his most altruistic aspiration. And he made the prediction, in 4 asankhya and 100,000 eons, this great yogi will be Gautama Buddha. So, millions and millions of lives passed. I've sometimes wondered why it takes so long, the Bodhisattva path. And I think I have some intuition. See, it's not just in setting the aspiration to be a teaching Buddha, a Samma Sambuddha. It's not just the Buddha's own qualities and perfection of wisdom and liberation that the Bodhisattva has to liaise and help to manifest, bring into being. He needs the entire team. So he needs great disciples, foremost patrons, kings, the whole situation to support the liberation of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of beings. So my feeling is that's a part of why it takes so long. Millions and millions of lives. When Lord Buddha, or when the Bodhisattva attained to Anuttara Samma Sambodhiyana under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, in the 7 weeks immediately after that experience, he would spend 1 week in the bliss of liberation, Vimutti Sukha, and then after that week abiding in the bliss of liberation, he would have a very profound contemplation about what he had realized and how he had realized it. One was the paticca samudappada, the dependent co-arising in forward and reverse. My favorite contemplation of Lord Buddha's from this 7-week period is when he came out of his week experiencing the bliss of liberation, and he himself was in awe, amazed by the wondrousness of Nibbana. And he was aware that it was a very subtle and difficult thing to experience, actualize, realize, difficult to penetrate. And so he wondered, how is it possible that I have attained to this deathless, unconditioned Nibbana? And one of the reasons I love the teaching is because it's so simple, yet profound, all-encompassing. He had the realization that the 5 spiritual powers, when cultivated, made much of, lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. So in the Sutta Pitaka, we have 84,000 Dhamma verses, all over the hundreds, thousands of occasions where Lord Buddha was teaching many different individuals and groups of people in different circumstances. And yet here we have Lord Buddha condensing his path, his realization, into this simple teaching. 5 faculties that we all have, when cultivated to become spiritual powers, lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. The first one is faith, sattha. So what is it that we need to have faith in? We have faith that Nibbana is real. Nibbana is possible to realize. Ultimate reality, ultimate potential of conscious beings. Why do we need to have faith in a Sangha? The fact that thousands, tens of thousands, possibly millions of beings have realized the very same liberation that Lord Buddha realized is a teaching in itself. What that is teaching us is, this is the potential of conscious beings. It's not simply these amazing, wonderful beings who become Buddhas every few asankhyas after many eons. If anybody practices in accordance with Dhamma, as the Samma Sambuddha teaches, that being practicing rightly, practicing correctly, realizes the same liberation that Lord Buddha realized, complete cessation from suffering. So, from this, we must internalize faith in our own ability. Because Lord Buddha demonstrated the potential of conscious beings, described that path, and because he had millions of disciples who practiced rightly, practiced correctly, who realized the same liberation, that means that that is also one's own potential. Simply a matter of practicing in accordance with Dhamma, dana, sila and bhavana, laying the causes so that the fruit will come in its time. So that quality of faith is a quality of faith which is truly powerful. Faith in Nibbana, faith in the Buddha's realization of Nibbana, faith in Dhamma, the power of truth, faith in the Sangha, all of those beings who have practiced rightly, practiced correctly, been liberated just as Lord Buddha was. And then faith. So faith is also sometimes translated as confidence. Confidence in one's potential, in one's ability. This kind of faith gives rise to a very good quality of energy, and that's the next of the spiritual powers. Thinking back again to the period of time where Lord Buddha, recently enlightened under the Bodhi tree, was spending those 7 weeks. On another occasion, abiding in the bliss of Nibbana, the bliss of liberation, Vimutti Sukh, he came out of his peaceful experience and contemplated yet again, how is it possible that I realize this wondrous, complete cessation of every type of suffering, unshakable peace? And again, he could gather this realization into a small and pithy, profound list. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, one of the 5 spiritual powers. Lord Buddha made the utterance, the four foundations of mindfulness, when made much of, merge in the deathless and lead to the deathless. I want to go now to making it practical. When we look at the introduction of the Anapanasati Sutta that Lord Buddha gave in Savatthi, before he gave the actual teaching, he described the power and potential of this practice of breath meditation. Lord Buddha describes that through practicing breath meditation, the four foundations of mindfulness are cultivated, can be fully cultivated. The next sentence is, by bringing these four foundations of mindfulness to completion, the 7 factors of enlightenment are also cultivated. And in fulfilling these 7 factors of enlightenment, developing them, liberation occurs, deliverance of mind. So here we have one paragraph at the beginning of the Anapanasati Sutta. By practicing breath meditation, one develops the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Through developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness with breath meditation, the 7 factors of enlightenment are fulfilled. In fulfilling the 7 factors of enlightenment, deliverance of mind occurs. Again, another wonderful, simple teaching. And the reason I wanted to bring this up today is that sometimes I think we underestimate the power of a meditation object. There are so many teachings about so many things, and there are many things to learn. There are many different types of wisdom. But here we have Lord Buddha saying, 5 spiritual powers lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. That means nibbana. Powers made even more simple. Mindfulness as one of the 5 spiritual powers, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, when cultivated, made much of, lead to the deathless. And then, making it even more simple, Lord Buddha explained at the beginning of the Anapanasati Sutta that through diligently, sincerely cultivating mindfulness of breathing, the 4 foundations of mindfulness can be brought to fruition, the 7 factors of enlightenment can be fully cultivated, and the practitioner will experience deliverance of mind. The reason I just wanted to point to this today is that I would like us all to have great confidence in the power of breath meditation as a meditation object. Lord Buddha, on another occasion, described breath meditation as being the crown jewel of all the meditation objects. Because when we come to meditate, we might have a lot of thoughts, we might have a lot of doubts, we might have a lot of restlessness, we have the experience of the 5 hindrances. So when that is the ordinary experience, we might underestimate just how powerful this practice is. It's important to understand the potential so that we commit and give good energy to our meditation practice, trying to make it practical, just thinking about what happens when we come to do breath meditation. You're sitting there with a body. You know you're sitting. When there is an in-breath and an out-breath, you're aware of feelings which arise in relation to having a body. This is developing mindfulness of the body. You want to simply be aware of the feelings of the breath, but there's thinking, there's emotions. So while you're trying to be aware of the breath, you become mindful of thoughts. You become mindful of feelings first. You're mindful of the feelings related with breath. And then with the emotions, happy emotions in the area of the heart, there's a certain type of feeling. Angry emotions, there's a certain type of feeling. You simply want to be aware of the breath, but there are these feelings. You're becoming mindful of feelings. The various thoughts related to the hindrances. In trying to apply the attention to simply knowing the breath, you are becoming aware that there is thinking. People often feel like they can't meditate because they have a lot of thinking. It's very important to understand that sitting and knowing that you're thinking, becoming mindful of thoughts as thoughts, or mind objects as mind objects, cittanupassana, you are developing mindfulness. It's very different to be mindful that you are thinking and trying not to think the next thought. It's very different to just thinking and thinking and thinking. And this practice has within it infinite potential to purify and liberate the mind. As mindfulness gets clearer, you will notice the quality of the thought. Is this a wholesome thought? Is this an unwholesome thought? Simply through the practice of breath meditation, your sensitivity to dhammas, wholesome dhammas, unwholesome dhammas, your mindfulness with clear comprehension, because when mindfulness is scattered, there isn't much clarity in the mind. But when we pick up one object and try to be mindful of one object, here I'm talking about breath meditation, what happens is the mindfulness gets clearer. Mindfulness has this quality that it recognizes the nature of things. Lord Buddha just explained, as I said, in the contemplation under the Bodhi tree, that the four foundations of mindfulness, when cultivated, lead to nibbana, lead to liberation. In the Anapanasati Sutta, he said that breath meditation can bring to fruition, to complete fulfillment of cultivation, the four foundations of mindfulness. So, in simply coming to sit, there might be pain, but you're aware of the body sitting, and you're aware of feelings. In coming to sit and trying to be aware of the breath, you are aware of thoughts. You're aware of emotions and hindrances. The more you meditate, you become more skilled. This is a hindrance. This is a kilesa. These are the 5 spiritual powers. I need to sharpen my mindfulness. I need to come back to my meditation object. And as the mindfulness sharpens and the mind begins to collect and gather, the samadhi grows. When there's good mindfulness, some stability of samadhi, the wisdom becomes powerful enough to penetrate, to experience nibbana, to uproot and destroy ignorance and delusion. So I think I've been asked to talk for an hour, and I think my watch fell down at exactly 1 hour. So I wanted to offer this reflection on the 5 spiritual powers, on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, on the power of breath meditation as a meditation object, and I hope that something I've said is encouraging, and if I have said anything wrong or incorrect, I ask forgiveness. We can only teach according to our understanding, and I have taught to the best of my ability, according to my understanding, with the wholesome intention to help people to have faith in anapanasati and to cultivate 4 foundations of mindfulness through practicing meditation and maintaining meditation, the mindfulness throughout all postures. And I hope that you are able to continue to develop the 5 spiritual powers, and may those 5 spiritual powers lead your mind to the deathless. May you experience complete cessation of greed, hatred and delusion and nibbana as quickly as possible. If any merit has arisen through offering this teaching and encouragement, I would like to offer it to Rama the Ninth, Ong Bhumipon, on the occasion of his birthday.
Sadhu,